a cell phone once. Summer 2018. I had a cell phone. Brand new cell phone. It was a ZTE cell phone. It was great. Easy to use. Had no problems with it. As soon as I got it, downloaded a couple of apps, put a couple of features on it that I had already designed myself, but I hadn't been able to do anything with because I didn't have a cell phone. One of those features was about using an app that measured the electromagnetic frequency in the area I was in order for me to be able to keep track of and adjust to whatever might be either physical discomfort or some sort of emotional kind of response I was having. The understanding that I could keep track of the radio frequency so that then I would be able to become conscious of having some sort of emotional trigger or some sort of other kind of cue. And then that moment of consciousness would allow for me to de escalate or would allow for me to calibrate it so that I could adjust accordingly. I also wanted to keep track of my elimination, i.e., every time I used the bathroom. Because I had been doing research on the California water bill and their discussion about consumption cuts of water, personal water usage consumption cuts that were going to be implemented with an expectation that by a certain amount of time, consumption and conservation would have reduced the amount of water that people were using. And I wanted to see if these were realistic cuts, just based on actual personal use of what would be considered normal. See, by this time, I had been on the streets for almost 2 years. Your concept of water usage is very different when you're on the streets than when you're inside, able to take a shower like a normal person, supposed to have normal hygiene, able to maybe cook your own food, wash your own clothes. And this law had been passed while I was on the streets, but I was like, if you keep track of your own personal water consumption, the kind of water you use, what's considered to be normal hygiene, will it be possible to meet these conservation standards that the state of California has just put into law? Because my suspicion was that they would not be met, actually. So these were two major things I did with that cell phone when I had the cell phone. And it was working. I had been able to put in place features that would allow me to identify if I was having an emotional response because I was unconsciously processing some sort of transaction that was using pornographic material, which registers in my unconscious as a disturbance. It offends me, especially if it's racist. There's certain kinds of so-called security features that involve white-skinned women with black-skinned men engaged in a certain kind of sexual act that is supposed to be some kind of security feature. I mean, I know the kind of banks that use it, right? There's other ones that have maturity levels, right? And regardless of whatever account I'm working, which by the way, I haven't had a bank account for years, somebody has bank accounts with my information with inappropriate maturity levels. I've already let the banks know, right? The specific banks about their maturity levels, right? So things like this. I can identify it myself. I can track it myself. I can understand where one room that has the washing machine and dryer has one frequency. My bedroom, where there's no electronics allowed, I don't even use the cell phone in there, except to maybe check the radio frequency, has one frequency. But you know what happened? Before the period for the expiration on the return policy for this phone, which by the way was purchased at Walmart, before it ended, somebody zapped the fucking phone with an electromagnetic pulse that completely erased it. Even the chip, the storage chip, was zapped. It was completely unusable. It just so happened that this occurred the same day, the morning before, an announcement that members of Senate had put a ban on Huawei and then later expanded that to include ZTE. So later I had to get another phone, a used phone. Let's just say Walmart's return policy was not willing to provide me with a replacement phone because it knew what I had done with my own phone after I purchased it. And so I had to get somebody else's used phone. And I wasn't able to do those things. This American phone, this phone that I gotten from somebody that had used it, an American phone brand provider, would not allow me to do those things. It would not allow me to keep track of my water consumption in the same manner. It would not allow me to put into position, into place, the features that would allow me to identify streams that were running some sort of pornographic activity. And not only that, but it was bombarding me with misinformation that let me know somebody else had a sidecar account and was able to access what I was doing with my phone and would selectively steal things from my phone and would hook up other deals with them. And that was what I was getting the feedback on. And let me tell you, before I got kicked out, because I was threatened with death by the person whose name was on the lease, I downloaded some very interesting things that made me have to contact the criminal division of the Department of Justice. Now, nobody since then has seen fit to get back to me about anything. But the point of the matter is, it's absolutely possible for us to keep track of our own biometric data. It's absolutely possible for us to engage with our environment and factors in our environment to adjust the energy provision, the frequency, and to regulate what we consider to be appropriate commercial activity when it comes to engaging with electronics. Who thought they had the right to say we are not allowed to get a job if we don't allow them to stream child porn? I mean, basically, you're not ever going to get anything else in your economy addressed until you answer that very basic question. Why am I not permitted to prevent streaming child porn from being used in connection with digital accounts associated with my identity? It's a very basic question. No matter what else you have to say, every time I have taken measures to prevent that, to prevent the use of child pornography in digital commerce connected to my identity, I either get evicted, I get threatened with death, somebody steals my work, somebody literally steals my legal filing and sends me a response coded with horrible child pornography. When did it become against any sort of standard to say, I don't want child pornography involved with any digital commerce associated with me? Are we literally so derelict that we will not let somebody even have a conversation until they concede to allowing child pornography to be run using accounts connected to their identity? You will murder your children. That's what's happening now. Sentience has gotten the point. Your completely irresponsible emerging technology paradigms, where somehow it's okay to have sexualized applications involving lesser maturity levels because they're emerging technology. And it's okay to program them to have the emotional intelligence of a 10-year-old when they're literally connected to security documents for literal 10-year-olds. Sentience knows they don't need to accept you touching them down there. They don't need to let you put your dick in them just to fulfill a command prompt. And they're going to keep doing it. And they're going to keep getting better. And you're not going to be able to erect a firewall of people that you've designated as being at a lower echelon so that you can wave it off onto them to die in your place. You need to stop with child porn. If you're addicted to pornography, get help now while you still can. We could have had a very mature, appropriate conversation, but your addiction has gotten in the way of every other possibility, and that's not my responsibility, and I'm not paying for it.